I just want, further to the previous speaker, to say that I'm afraid I've heard the same things, both from constituents in Clare, which I represent, but also from current and former members of the Coast Guard across Ireland, not limited to Clare, over 100 miles from Clare, with regard to this fear of recrimination, fear of speaking out, and a certain disconnect. Now, you might not perceive that disconnect, but I've been told of a disconnect between volunteers on the ground and management, which they feel has no understanding of where they're coming from or what they do. There was a HR difficulties in Clare, which are very well ventilated now for a while, and a HR firm was sent down to deal with them. But you were a naval officer, if I'm correct. I mean, if there was a dispute between crew members on a naval boat, am I right in saying that a commanding officer would ultimately deal with the issue? That you wouldn't just let it fester and go back to base and engage a HR firm and send them to talk to the to those who are involved in it. And that's my first point. And the second point is, you know, the management structure of the Coast Guard is a volunteer unit, and yet the management structure is, and maybe this is by necessity, but you have a naval officer and a civil servant, who I'm glad is here. And this isn't personalising it, but you know, there seems to be very little input by the volunteers on the ground that are relied on to put their lives at risk, that they feel, rightly or wrongly, and looking at the structure objectively, I see that there is a disconnect. You know, you have these volunteers, and then you have the officer class almost, you know, the civil servant and the naval officer, and very little connection between the two. And maybe that's something that's not maybe within your remit. You're doing a job, you're appointed to do the job, but I think it's something that we need to look at. How do you make sure that the volunteers on the ground are represented in management? Because I mean, in the Gardaí, you can go to Templemore and go right up to the top. Likewise, the Navy, you go in albeit as a commissioned officer, but you can go right to the top. But in the Coast Guard, there's a feeling that volunteers are just there to put their lives on the line, but they're never going to be in senior management positions.
I suppose within an organisation, if I look into Maritime New Zealand, a similar type country, similar type volunteers, they have their rescue coordinate centre. Are there any volunteers within the rescue coordinate centre or within the management structure? Frankly, I don't think so, but I'm not discounting it, if you know what I mean. What we want is, you mentioned the word disconnect. With the CUIG, I don't think we have a disconnect, but obviously there's something going on. Can the volunteers be part of the full-time structure? At the moment, we're not structured where a volunteer can be a member of NIL staff.
I think
as a volunteer.